What is up, W and gang? Today we'll be talking about transitional fossils.
We picked out 5 fossils to look at today. Number 1 is Tiktaalik. Number 2 is Archaeopteryx. Number 3 is Pakicetus. Number 4 is Eusthenopteron. And number 5 is Amphistium.
First, we will start talking about Tiktaalik. So the Tiktaalik was in the area of the Devonian period, which was around 375 million years ago. It was part of the age of the fishes, and around that time also the first forests appeared. And that means that early vertebrates started to move into land.
Some other species during the time of the Tiktaalik were the Dunkleosteus, which was like a giant armored fish, the Ichthyostega, which was like an early amphibian, and the Cladoselash, which was an early shark.
So the Tiktaalik lived in a shallow freshwater environment like swamps and rivers. They were fish-like. They had gills, fins, and scales, but they were also amphibian-like since they had lungs and a flat head with eyes on top. It was just and they had strong pectoral fins with wrist-like bones, allowing it to push up in shallow water or even crawl on land.
Here's why it's considered a transitional species. The Tiktaalik bridges the gap between the lobe-finned fish of his time period and early amphibians like reptiles and snakes and that kind of thing. The Tiktaalik had limb-like fins. Its fins were resemblant of mammalian limbs and terrestrial animals' limbs. It had a neck that could move in multiple directions, and it had ribs that were supportive of land.
So the ancestors were tetrapods, like amphibians, reptiles, mammals, and birds. And its extinction was led by, it was just more outcompeted by more advanced amphibians, and those fully adapted to land while the Tiktaalik couldn't, and environmental changes just contributed to its decline.
Number 2, we got Archaeopteryx. The Archaeopteryx existed in the late Jurassic period of the Mesozoic era, approximately 150 million years ago. Some major events of the late Jurassic period were dinosaurs were the main dominating organisms. Early birds evolved during this time period from the pterodactyl-like dinosaurs. And the continent of Pangaea continued to break apart due to tectonic shifts.
The Archaeopteryx lived in tropical forests and coastal areas. It had feathers, suggesting that it could most likely glide or perform weak-powered flight. It still retained the dinosaur traits, though. It had teeth, clawed fingers, and a long, bony tail.
Some other species during the Archaeopteryx were the Allosaurus, which was a large dinosaur. The Stegosaurus, as we know, is a big herbivore dinosaur, and the pterosaurs, which were flying reptiles like the pterodactyl. Here's why it's transitional. This is considered a transitional species because it shows the transition from small tetrapod dinosaurs to birds. The feathers on the Archaeopteryx suggest that it was able to had slight flight ability, even though it still had a dinosaur-like skeleton.
And it's an ancestor of modern birds in extinction. It was possibly outcompeted by more advanced early birds, and its environmental changes or predator pressures could have played a major role in the
For example, some bigger birds or bigger land animals could have taken advantage of its poor flight and could have easily wiped it out and led to its extinction. Thank you.
Now we have the Pakicetus. Its era was in the early Ecocene epoch, and that's also known as the Cenozoic era, and it was around 50 million years ago.
Some major events of the early Eocene epoch were mammals became a lot more diverse and had a lot more variation after the dinosaurs went extinct. This era came directly after the dinosaurs' mass extinction from the asteroid. So mammals became more prevalent. They were the dominant class of species, and then also early whales began to evolve in the ocean. So that we had not only did we have big mammals on land, we also started to get bigger and bigger mammals in the ocean, like whales.
Its function and environment. It lived in coastal and freshwater environments. It was a land-based mammal, but it showed early adaptations for aquatic life, and it had large ear bones specialized for underwater hearing, which is a whale trait.
Some other species during the Pachycetus era were the Basilosaurus, which was like a kind of a whale before whales even existed, early whale, and the Hyanodon, which was the predator of the species, and also early primates like apes and gorillas.
And it's transitional because it shows because it's transitioned from land mammals to fully aquatic whales and had limbs for walking on land, but also early aquatic adaptations.
So, for example, like this one, like the Tiktaalik was from water to land. This one, the Pachycetus, was more. It was a mammal on land and it had limbs for doing so, but it also was it was going back into the ocean to lead to the bigger aquatic mammals like whales.
And it's also an ancestor of modern whales, dolphins, and
porpoises.
And its extinction was that it gradually evolved into more aquatic species, losing its land-based traits. And more advanced early whales just replaced the species and led it to its extinction.
Yeah, so similarly to the Tiktaalik, how it was outcompeted by animals that were better on land because it was, even though it could go on land, it was better in the water. This was kind of the opposite. It was better on land than it was in the water. So that more species that were better in the water, they outcompeted them and they survived, while the Pachycetus went extinct. All right, so next we got the Eusthenopteron, which is a fish-like fossil species. The Eusthenopteron existed during the late Devonian period of the Paleozoic era, approximately 385 million years ago. Some major events during this period were that the first tetrapods evolved, that means animals that are on four legs. Forests on land spread, became a lot more numerous, and the oxygen levels in the atmosphere rose, which is what led to more land animals.
Some unique features were
Some other species during this time were Hyneria. It was a large predatory fish. Also, Acostegia, which is an early amphibian.
Here's the function and environment of the Eusthenopteron. So the Eusthenopteron lived in shallow waters, much like the Tiktaalik from before, like lagoons and rivers, like the Blue Lagoon. I don't know if you know what that is. What's that?
No, I don't know.
It was another lobe-finned fish that had strong, fleshy fins, kind of like Tiktaalik, and it likely used it to push through the water near the bottom of its environment.
And it's transitional because it had bones in its fins, similar to tetrapod limb bones, marking the transition from fish to amphibians. It also had lungs and gills, meaning it can breathe on both air and water.
The era was the late.
And it was an ancestor of the Tiktaalik and early amphibians.
Oh, man. So that means that, as I was saying earlier, this was very similar to the Tiktaalik. I noticed that as we were going through our points here, but actually, the reason for that is because it was actually, it actually came before the Tiktaalik, so that's cool.
Which affected many species.
And here's why it went extinct. So, unfortunately, the Eusthenopteron went extinct because it was really just replaced by better adapted amphibian-like animals. Just like that, much like the Tiktaalik. Even though it was able to go on land, other animals were better on land, and that's why they survived. Another reason they went extinct was environmental changes in the water systems of the time period, which may have played a role. Scientists speculate it may have played a role in its extinction. Last but not least, we have the Amphisteum. The Amphisteum existed during the Eocene epoch, which was similar to the Pachycetus from before. Number 3, the Pachycetus. The Eocene epoch during the Cenozoic era as well, which was approximately 50 million years ago. This is one of the most recent ones we've been looking at today. Some major events of the amphitheum's time were when it happened when mammals expanded even more onto land and water. Early birds developed, as well as whales evolved in the ocean.
And its functioning environment, it lived in shallow marine environments. And as an early flatfish, it was an early flatfish, but unlike modern ones, its eyes were not fully shifted to one side yet.
Yeah, for some reason, my partner here, keeps skipping over the other species. Some other species during the amphitheum's time were the Basilosaurus, early rodents, and the Megacerops, which is a rhino-like dinosaur.
And it's transitional because it bridges the gap between symmetrical fish and modern flatfish. It had one eye slightly migrating to one side, showing early adaptations for living on the seafloor. And it was an ancestor of the modern flatfish, flounder, halibut, and sole.
Here's why it went extinct. The amphitheum went extinct because it likely evolved into more asymmetrical flatfish over time, like the flounder. Like how the flounder, if you look at it, has one side has the eye, the other side is basically its belly. It's a flatfish. Only one side is considered its head, I guess. While humans, we have like symmetrical faces. As you can see with Matt, very symmetrical face. Flatfish doesn't really have that. So scientists speculate that it evolved into much more asymmetric flatfish, like the flounder. Another reason they went extinct. Speculated to be environmental changes and competition with more specialized flatfish, which also may have played a role in its extinction. Alright, WU gang, that's the end of our nice quick video for today.
Make sure to like, subscribe, comment what you learned, and just guys, see you in the next video.
Hit that like button down below.
And click the notification bell. See you guys.